So, Eric, let's finish it up with the NFC West. And one of our favorites here on the podcast, the Arizona Cardinals. Vegas also showing them no love, as we rarely do. Over-under set at 5 for the Cardinals, who draft Kyler Murray, ship Rosen out of town, completely redo this team with Kingsbury now under the helm as the head coach. So what do you like with the Cardinals, over or under 5?
I don't know. I don't know at all, Justin. I don't know how to feel about this team. I don't know how good they can be. I don't know how bad they might be. So without knowing for sure what Kingsbury and Kyler Murray have cooked up, it's really hard to even put a wager on this team. The other thing is, can David Johnson stay healthy? I mean, this guy was a fantasy bust last year, and he was a fantasy darling the years before that. I just don't know what you're going to get out of the backfield. And then Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, respect the guy to all ends, but he's old. I love what he's doing in the NFL, but what value does he bring? I don't know. And so to me, I don't even know if I can go push on this team. I've got to go under, and that's simply because of the unknowns.
Yeah, the better bet on the Cardinals might be whatever you can get that they won't make the playoffs. That's probably a safer bet because, yeah, there's a ton of questions on this team. I went under the 5. I don't think there's enough around Kyler Murray yet, especially early in the season. They're still developing a lot of young wide receivers. Kirk is one of their more veteran guys, and they just drafted him last year, and it's behind Fitzgerald. It's a bunch of really young guys. David Johnson had the freakish injury. He came back last year, and from just a raw number standpoint, yeah, he was in the top 10 in running backs, but we see running backs get hurt, go down all the time. So what's that mean? Early in the season, he wasn't doing anything, and I don't know if that was as much of his fault. All the changes on the offensive side of the ball that they had, they weren't happy with the head coach that they picked. They get him out of there in a year. Just a lot of turnover. It's still a weird roster that's going to need a lot of work, but they do have a name now, and they do have an identity with Kyler Murray. So I do like that they made that move. I'm just not ready to buy into it this year. Let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers. They were the pick last year. Everybody's picked to make a playoff run. Garoppolo goes down early in the season with the ACL. He's back. Didn't look very good in his first start at Denver in the preseason. Looked a little better versus Kansas City. Vegas has them in the middle of the road here. They have the over-under set at 8 with San Francisco. Are you buying into the 49ers this year?
I would have liked to, because I would like to shake this division up a little bit. I'd like this division to be intriguing. I think this division was getting more intriguing with the addition of Garoppolo and what he had done, not last year, but the end of the season prior, thinking, okay, we're going to have Jared Goff playing well. We're going to have Russell Wilson. We're going to have Garoppolo. We're going to have a strong NFC West. Now, depending on what you believe out of the practices and then the preseason games, I mean, the amount of interceptions that Garoppolo is throwing in practice, one report had him throwing 5 interceptions in a row in practice. That's crazy. So something is not clicking with this team yet. And so I think at the number being an 8, I'm very, very uncomfortable. They did bring in Tevin Coleman, and obviously George Kittle is one of those tight ends that if you're looking at fantasy football, if you haven't had your draft yet, he's like the Rob Gronkowski of a couple of years ago, or the Jimmy Graham of 8 years ago, or that type of thing, where there is a upper echelon of tight ends. And I think Kittle is in that category, but can Garoppolo deliver him the ball? I don't know. And then you've got to have McKinnon back healthy too from his ACL to really make this all work. When they put Matt Breida into a larger role last year, sometimes he looked good, sometimes he looked terrible. I just don't know, Justin. They don't seem deep enough at wide receiver for me. At 8, I feel uncomfortable. I got to take the under.
I'm right there with you. I went under on this team, and for a lot of the same reasons, especially the skill position at wide receiver. That's just a lot of questions there. They've drafted a lot of young guys on the defensive side. I think they'll be fine there. But again, we talk about it all the time. The regular season, especially early in the season, they play in San Francisco where the weather is typically very nice and very friendly for offenses. Sometimes the great defenses just don't mean a lot when you get to those situations where it's just an offensive shootout. I'm not exactly sold on that yet with this team. And they have so many running backs. It seems like one of them has to be a trade candidate. Breida, they signed Coleman, they have McKinnon, just a lot of names there that do the same kind of stuff that feels like they could go out and get some kind of value for one of those guys with teams that are going to need these running backs. So I went under with the 49ers as well. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks. Vegas has their number set at 8.5. So what do you like with Seattle this year?
This one's tough for me. 8.5's, Vegas did a nice job on that one because 9 really makes me squeamish. I don't know that I'm comfortable at 9 because Russell Wilson's great. Chris Carson could be awesome. What do you have after that? Doug Baldwin's retired. You've got just a lot of unknowns there. Tyler Lockett can't always seem to stay healthy at wide receiver. I don't know. So this is going to surprise you because it's going to be my third one in a row in this division that I go under. I feel more confident at 8-8 with Seattle.
I went slightly over. I have them at 9-7. And again, they're kind of like the Panthers for me, where I feel like because of they're always looking at their roster that I undervalue them. And then what we talk about with Russell Wilson all the time is that when things go hectic and haywire, he just goes to the backyard football. And it's like, how can you measure that? Everything's breaking down. He's running around in circles and running 60 yards behind the line of scrimmage and wears everybody out. And then he throws a bomb to Lockett late in the game and they win. And you're like, where did that come from? Their probability to win was like nothing. And somehow he made something out of nothing. And he does it all the time. So I'm going to go slightly over. So common opponent for the NFC West this year, they've got the AFC North and then the NFC South. So not an easy schedule, but there's some winnable games in there. I think for Seattle, they have a great home field advantage. So that's why I gave them the nod to go over. So the final team for our NFL preview shows, the Los Angeles Rams. Vegas likes the Rams. They've got them set at 10.5, same number as the Saints. So what do you like with the Rams this year? Over or under 10.5?
I got to go over 10.5. I feel like this team could win 12 games. I really do. I still think that McVay has them clicking on all cylinders. You have Cooks, Woods, if Kupp stays healthy, Higbee at tight end. We know Gurley's there. We know what Darrell Henderson could possibly be. And I actually drafted him late in one of my fantasy football leagues because there's a lot of upside to Darrell Henderson. So keep an eye on him. If Goff has the year again that he's capable of, this is a big, big team. Now, we don't name a lot of defensive players because for number one, a lot of the listeners, that just doesn't move the needle for them. We could, but it just doesn't move the needle. However, I want to say something here with this defense. Aaron Donald has a 99 rating on Madden football that just came out. That's one of the highest ratings that Madden has ever given a player when the game is first released. And a lot of times that goes to someone other than a defensive player. So they really feel highly about Aaron Donald. And then you're going to put around him Clay Matthews, Dante Fowler, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, Eric Weddle. This defense is so good. That's why I think that this team is going to get help when the offense is off the field. And then they're just going to be lightning in a bottle when the offense is on the field if Goff plays well again. I don't think this was tough for me at 10.5 to go over. And I don't know if you'll feel the same way, Justin, but to me, with what I was saying with those other teams, with the Cardinals, I believe Seattle's going to be under. I believe that the 49ers are going to be under. Where I'm giving the Rams the additional wins is from me being under on those other divisional rivals.
I got to ditto everything that you said. I like the Rams to go over, maybe not at quite as much as you have them at 11-5, but I could definitely see a path to get to 12. There's just a lot to like about this team. They're loaded at a lot of different positions. And again, we talk about the Saints. The Rams have to have a little chip on their shoulder too, and McVay does as well. He got embarrassed in the Super Bowl. He is the offensive genius, this new wave of coaching, and Belichick put him on it and shut that offense down. So the big question mark on this team is Todd Gurley. Is Todd Gurley going to be the guy that we saw early last year, or is he going to be regressed back to limited in his number of touches every single game, week in, week out? Because as good as a guy like Henderson may look, I don't think he's going to be as good as Gurley was last year. So I think that's the question on this team, but they have enough where I think they can make up for it in the regular season. Playoff time may be a different story. But I like the Rams as well, going over that 10.5 number. So, Rick, that's a wrap here for segment 2 and also a wrap for our NFL preview show. If you like what we did with the NFC, you want to hear what we did with the AFC, check out episode 302. You can find that on Apple iTunes or any major podcatcher site. When we come back, it's overtime. We've got to talk about DeMarcus Cousins and not for the ACL. The clock is ticking. It's overtime here on the show. One final story to talk about. This was a story I had in the notes last week. We had such a long show, it kind of got bumped. And that was DeMarcus Cousins going down in a practice with an ACL tear and is going to miss this coming season. Was going to ask you, Eric, what your thoughts were, how that would affect the Lakers. Well, all of a sudden, the story pops up about DeMarcus Cousins' personal life, and it's not the fact that he got married. It's the fact that there's now a warrant out for his arrest, that he made a threat over the phone to his ex-girlfriend, mother of his 7-year-old child, that he was going to put a bullet in her head for not allowing the child to come to his wedding this past weekend in Atlanta. So, Eric, DeMarcus Cousins has been in the news for all the wrong reasons, and this is not new. Normally, it's been his attitude on the floor, running coaches out of town, bouncing around from team to team. Golden State was supposed to be the great reclamation project for his career. It ended up landing him a 1-year, $3.5 million deal, and now he's not going to play this entire season with another major injury. Are we ever going to see DeMarcus Cousins back in the NBA playing a prominent role in the near future?
No, I don't think we should. Here's the thing. He's going to miss a lot of time this year, as you said, with the ACL. And then I think the NBA actually needs to institute a lengthy suspension. We've talked about the NFL with domestic violence. That's not to say it doesn't happen in the NBA. And now we're seeing a case right here where really he's threatening murder. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He's threatening murder. And that's a very, very serious offense. It's verbal abuse, even if it's not physical abuse in the moment. It's verbal abuse. And it needs to be taken very seriously. It's a threat. It's a crime. I think after his injury is healed, he then needs to be suspended. If teams want to cut ties and say, well, we're not going to hire you to play basketball on our team because of this, I think that's completely reasonable as well.
Whatever they do needs to start after next season. Okay, he's already out with the knee injury. So whatever suspension they're going to, don't make it now. You set that when he's actually ready to play. And if he gets on a roster, if a team is actually gives him a, fifth chance at this point for all that the hell that he's raised in locker rooms and that he's been a distraction and now his personal life is also a story. It's just too much. If I'm a team, there's no way I'm signing this guy. You're going to be a team that is just, you're going to give him a deal like Dwight Howard got with the Lakers, that there's no guaranteed money in it. It's a summer deal. And at any time that if he's an issue, you just get rid of him. You cut ties and you don't have any money laying around. You don't have anything to worry about. That's what DeMarcus Cousins is going to end up being. And you talk about the fall from grace and maybe even a bit of karma for this guy that was just sitting in Sacramento. He could have been the toast of the town. He was putting up huge numbers, and all he did was run coach after coach out of town, was always an issue with his attitude, and even gets a shot with Golden State. Can't stay healthy, and then is just unproductive with his on-the-court play, and now he's got all this drama. The NBA needs to step in and do something, and these teams, maybe they just need to move on from him. There's got to be guys out there that can be as productive, if not more, than DeMarcus Cousins is going to be when he's finally able to come back from the injury and potential suspension and be more productive and not have all the baggage that Cousins brings. So it's going to be a team that is in desperate need of someone. That's the only way I see him getting a job, Eric, in the near future.
Couldn't agree more. I think it has to be at the end of his injury time. And I think the teams need to think long and hard about whether this guy deserves any more time in the NBA. That's going to wrap up episode 303. But before we leave the studio, Justin, we've got NFL coming next week, September 5th. The Packers go into Soldier Field and play the Bears. Just give me a gut reaction prediction of who wins the first NFL football game in the regular season of 2019.
Wow, should be a good one. I got to side with the Bears, though. Having home field opening night just feels like when we see these games that come out, a lot of times it's kind of a different look for the NFL. Normally they're in New England, the team that wins the title, getting the rings, hanging their banner. With this 100th year of NFL football, they're kind of kicking it back to their roots, going to Soldier Field with the Bears. It just feels like it's a game that Chicago should win, in my opinion, opening up at home, opening up the NFL season. Their fans are going to be going nuts. So I'm going with Chicago. Who do you like?
Yeah, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go the Packers. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a great opening game for the season. Both teams healthy for the most part. Both teams have their star players on the field. And so game one, cleats hit the turf. who's going to win, I think Aaron Rodgers pulls out some big plays at the end and